they posted a video that was a setup, but that setup failed. They failed. And they left it online and it had millions of views. So what happened was all the suggested views at the end of that became my video. It was a very unique video as it was successful. I explained things very simply and most people could get it working. So it took off. It took off huge.
Welcome to another edition, another episode of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky. I am your host, Jon Santiago, and each week I interview content creators. I should say every other week. Still sometimes thinking in terms of each week, but I do interview content creators every other week about their experiences of building an online audience primarily through video. And this week, giving you back your time while taking the frustration out of automation. That is the mission behind Automate Your Life, a YouTube channel that on the surface teaches viewers how to leverage the latest innovations in smart home technology. Now, this week on the podcast, I have the pleasure of welcoming Brian Reed, the founder of Automate Your Life, onto the show. Now, Brian started the channel with a simple video tutorial for his family's Google Home in 2017. And since then, Automate Your Life has grown to reach a subscriber base of more than 100,000 people. It's even spawned a second channel that provides 5-minute tutorials on setting up smart home devices. Now, in this episode, I chat with Brian about the inner workings of his life and career as a creator, including why leaving his day job to become a creator full-time was actually a calculated risk, the factors that creators should evaluate before taking on brand deals, as well as a host of other topics and discussion around the business of Automate Your Life. And finally, the importance of having a deeper purpose behind your career as a content creator. And so much more. You don't want to miss this conversation. We are going to get into it here in just a moment. But before we do, I would like to tell you about Video Husky, obviously our presenting sponsor for this podcast. It's our company after all. If you need content created for you, you want to go ahead and visit our website, www.videohusky.com, learn more about us, and sign up for a call to talk to one of our account representatives to see if Video Husky could be right for you as a content creator. So again, go to www.videohusky.com to learn more about what we do to handle video editing on your behalf. So without further ado, let's go ahead and toss it to my conversation with Brian Reed of Automate Your Life. Brian Reed, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky, man. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, how is it up there in Canada right now? I'm here in Oklahoma and it is like freezing cold. Like the weather here. I moved here a couple weeks ago. I think the last time we spoke, I had already moved here, and right outside my window, it's snow, like covered in snow, my street. And, I guess it's funny for me, like I kind of want to open up this conversation asking you for tips on how to deal with snow, because I know that you deal with that up there in Canada yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we got, I want to say 3 or 4 inches of snow last night. And
oh, wow.
It's minus 7 right now. So it's actually, sorry, that's Celsius. So, do your conversions. But
I think that's similar here right now, actually. The
really?
Temperature here in Oklahoma is like minus 7 or -5 or something along those lines.
Gee, I didn't even think it would get that cold down there. So that's pretty crazy, actually. That's, like 2 days ago, it was minus 30, and they said, okay, with the wind chill, it's minus 40. And that's when you need to deal with not even snow. You don't touch the snow. Forget the snow, because it just turns to ice, and it's terrible. But, my car was barely starting. It was outside for a little bit, and it barely starts when you get down to those temperatures. So otherwise, I mean, honestly, you guys don't have things like winter tires, right? That's what we have.
No.
So then our lives just continue. I have different tires on in the winter, and my life just continues as per normal as it snows and ices up, and then snows and ices up. And yeah, so that's it, man. You got to get those winter tires because they don't freeze. They're so good.
Yeah, that's the weird thing here, because the weather is so, what I've learned since moving here is that the weather is so, all over the map. At times it's like on Sunday, it was around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is around like 20 or so Celsius. Yep. And then here we are like less than a week later, and it's freezing, and it's snowing. And so I don't know if I was talking to some people about them, like, do you have snow tires or winter tires for these situations? Like, we don't normally have snow like this. So no, we just have like the all season stuff.
Yeah, and that's good most of the time. It's only a place like here that you really, really need them. But I'll tell you, my last car, because I was living out in the country, I had spikes on it for the winter tire.
Oh, really?
Like my tires actually had, I don't know. Can I make that? Yeah. That kind of size of tire. So, or spike. And that was just so that they would grip. And they're like not allowed in the summer in some places. And so, we can get to those extremes, but otherwise, man, just hide out.
That's what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm on this podcast conversation with you, because there's really nowhere else to go. Like places are closed. So this is actually like the perfect time to do a podcast with you, because I can't really go outside right now. So
go play. What are you talking about? I mean, that is the other thing. Make some snowballs and go chuck them at your neighbors.
That's true. I think there is enough snow outside to maybe even build a snowman. I have to double check. I might, after this conversation, I might do that.
Go try it.
But anyways, let's get into you actually, and talk more obviously about your journey, your path to where you are today. And doing research for this conversation, and you gave me like a light heads up too when we last spoke. You said, yeah, just go check out my LinkedIn profile and listen to this one podcast episode I recorded with a friend of mine. Yeah. And you'll notice that I have like a pretty unusual path to getting to where that I am today. And yeah, you definitely did not disappoint there in terms of looking at your LinkedIn profile. But I could see the connections though, in terms of what you were doing career-wise. But we'll touch on that.
Sure.
First and foremost, I want to touch on just your interest and passion for technology, because it seems like this is something that you have been, that has been such a firm part of your life since your childhood. In fact, I got a kick out of that other podcast that you did, the Craig's Tech Talk podcast with your friend Craig, on just like your experience of getting your first computer and playing Carmen Sandiego.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because I did that. I think I had the same exact experience with computers too. Was it the MS-DOS version of Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah. You had the command line get to start it up. And when you did, I mean, it was like just a couple of cards, I feel like, on the screen, really, and some text that would show up. And yeah, I mean, that was the first, I feel like it was the first day we had the computer in the home. And it was I feel like it was a 486, which was a pretty expensive computer at that point. And because I think most people were still in the 386. Like, I think that was kind of the timeline, but we had a little extra money, and there you go. So that kicked it off. And honestly, within a very short period of time, I had my own computer in my room, and I started playing with everything I could and breaking everything I could. And it was just kind of, that's the way I wanted to go with my life. So I just kept doing it. And then I was building websites and building lots of different things online, and left it a bit to kind of head down the engineering world, but always kept my foot in the door, so to speak, and then decided it was time to head back and do what I loved.
So when you were building websites, were you doing that on like GeoCities or Angel Fire, things like that? Like, Brian, you and I are dating ourselves for this audience. If there are like Gen Z people listening to this, or even the younger millennials, they're like, what is GeoCities?
GeoCities.
I remember doing the same thing too, just with all the little animated GIFs that you could throw onto the site. But that's what you were doing too, huh?
Totally.
In the 90s.
Totally. I mean, so like, I can't remember which was the first site I built, but I remember the ones that kind of went, and this is what hooked me a little bit, to be honest. It's I made when Chris Jericho came on to WWE Raw. It was WWF Raw, I think, at the time. But
I remember this.
You remember that?
The Y2J, the Y2J countdown. I think he interrupted. He made his debut while The Rock, the great Dwayne Johnson, was cutting a promo in the middle of the ring.
and they let him do that, and it was a huge thing. And I remember I was kind of annoyed with that countdown because they kept showing it over, a couple of weeks. And I remember being really annoyed. But then he came out and he was hilarious. And I took to him immediately. So, and he said something, Raw is Jericho. And I went and I registered that site. I think it was maybe a week later. I went and I registered that on GeoCities as the name of my site, and I created Raw as Jericho.
Wow.
And just started like getting pictures and adding, the things you used to do. You could just steal content at that point. And
yes.
But by that time I knew how to build sites. Like, I don't even remember how I ended up there. But then later, Lita came on, and I made a Raw as Lita and a Raw as something else. And I had a friend working with me, and then we got real fancy because he managed to pipe cable into his PC, so then we could take screen grabs. So then it was Raw is Live, and we made Raw is Live, and then we only did it a few times because we were fairly, I used to be fairly young, so we were fairly young, and so we didn't do it a ton. But we would take the live screenshots and post them on there, and that started to generate some serious traffic. And so did, obviously, the Lita website was the one that really went, because guys. So yeah,
yes, indeed, and during that time of the WWE Attitude Era, there was very much catered towards mature audiences. But guys like us who were like teenagers were like, "This is great."
Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And one thing I would have not expected to have talked to you about on this conversation is professional wrestling.
I could go for hours.
That makes sense though, because you're from Alberta, right? I mean, and Canada has some amazing and some great Hall of Fame pro wrestlers to come out. I mean, obviously you've got Bret Hart, you've got Owen, you've got the whole Hart family.
Yep.
Chris Jericho obviously is from Canada. I mean, there's so much talent there in terms of professional wrestling. So
as sad as the end was for Chris Benoit, he's from Edmonton. So that was really cool to see. And actually, I went to that, and we met Chris Jericho on the street.
Oh, wow.
We ran into him, and all three of us were wearing the white. I can't remember what it said on the shirt, but it was a white shirt, and it had like yellow and red lettering, and it was his shirt. All three of us are walking. We had all bought tickets, and we heard he was going. It was called the Starlight Lounge. And we walked right past him. He was coming out of a pizza place next door to it. And he's just like, whoa, look at these guys. And then he asked if we were going to a show. This was after I think it was called like Breakout or something. I can't remember. It was a pay-per-view. We actually got a pay-per-view here in Edmonton. So that was pretty exciting. And so I got chairs with Chris Benoit's face on it because we were front and center. I loved wrestling, man. I could go for hours. You want to go for hours about that instead?
Maybe at some point you and I can just start a pro wrestling podcast, like a throwback pro wrestling podcast, and just talk about wrestling from like the late 90s to early 2000s, because that's when I watched too. You know, I was watching at that time with Stone Cold and The Rock and, you know, Kurt Angle and whatnot, and just everything that was going on there, and then kind of left it as I got into my later teen years and started doing more stuff with computers like yourself. I imagine you were probably dabbling with like Adobe Premiere or something in the early 2000s or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I dabbled in a lot of things. Like I tried out everything. I'm not the most graphical person, and I'm not the best with a lot of the creative tools necessarily, but I dabbled with pretty much everything. Actually, I used to film quite a bit of minor hockey. And that's actually how, like, my dad used to do it for hockey teams around here locally, and he'd create videos and like highlight videos for them at the end of a hockey season. And he used to make really good money, and this is what he did on the side. And that's actually what I started with. So I started filming hockey, and I became a really good cameraman in terms of following the puck and keeping people in frame and those kinds of things, and just learning the basics of cameras. And we just used to do a ton of that. So that kind of kept me using lots of different video tools and things like that. But I didn't use Adobe Premiere until I started on YouTube, because we had different NLE editors. The one that we used actually was called Edius by a company called Canopus. And I think they're long since gone. But honestly, a lot of the software was as good as Adobe is today. So I kind of miss that software, to be honest.
Yeah, there's some software that, you know, you used back in the day that were like competitors to Adobe Photoshop or Premiere, and they've long since gone. But I have like fond memories of that time, much like you probably do of just the way computers and the internet was, you know, in the early 2000s, and what it's evolved into today is pretty spectacular. I want to go now, as we teased earlier, just diving into your later life and then going into your career, because I think there's actually connections here to what you're doing today. With your YouTube channel. I just found it fascinating that you started this career, built a career like it as essentially an engineer, correct?
Yep.
But you were already doing a lot of things. Well, you were doing things in that career related to automation.
Oh, yeah.
Was that your introduction to creating automated systems, or were you doing that before your career?
You know, well, something I talk about every once in a while on my channel is my focus on time in life. And so I did not spend a lot of time, even as a kid, in menial tasks, or what I viewed as menial tasks. And nowadays I have a different perspective on that. But, you know, as a kid, I always had to be doing the next thing. I had to be doing what I wanted and the next thing. And what it really came out to was a real focus on time. So yeah, I was always naturally automating things in my life, so I didn't have to do them or finding the quickest path through them. My introduction to a true control system or automation, it came in university. University, we had a specific course on control systems. So unfortunately, engineering in Canada, this is a whole thing I could go down. Engineering in Canada is very theoretical. It's not, there's not a lot of practical within the whole thing. So I learned lots of the theory of control systems and automation and all that stuff. But it was my friend from university, one of my best friends in life, is Sheffy is his name. And he got me an in at this company here. It was a small engineering firm. All they did was automation, programming, programmable logic controllers, PLCs. And so that was my first introduction to really understanding how deep we could go with automation. And that was all on oil pipelines and in oil facilities and things like that. But that was my introduction. And, you know, I got to go from programming these tiny little one-off sites in the middle of nowhere to one of the biggest facilities in Canada, being the lead programmer on in that company. And we were automating the automation by the time I left that company.
Oh my gosh.
So we were building the code that would go into that facility through automated software tools. And all we had to have was a spreadsheet that would come from the customer. So, you know, we really started to automate in that. And, so, and I loved all of that. I totally loved it. But what I didn't love was living in the middle of nowhere, which is what that job entailed. You were constantly out on oil facilities and in places that, you know, nobody lived. And so, yeah, it wasn't a fun travel life. So I left that, and then I kind of progressed in my career, doing more automation initially there with a much bigger company.
Gotcha. There's something there that you mentioned in the beginning about your relationship to time, which I found fascinating, even just in preparing for this conversation. Did you what are your earliest memories of realizing like, hey, time is really a valuable, you know, asset? Because it seems like it's fascinating to me that it seems like you started to understand that at a young age, yet most young people kind of see time as a commodity that, you know, can be just tossed aside and not really considered much.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've told this story online, but or in any sort of social media, but I don't know exactly how old I was, or at least I can't remember right now, but I remember sitting in my room, and it was in Canada where I live, like it in the middle of summer, it's 11:30 at night and it's still bright out. It's still so bright out. The sun is totally up. And then you get to winter, you get to now, and at 5 p.m. the sun is gone. So it was in the middle of summer. It's like 11:30. I can't sleep. It's hot. And I had just watched this show, and this will date me too. Nova. You remember Nova?
Oh yeah, I remember Nova.
And they had a program
PBS
where they were talking about, okay, the sun will explode someday. And this was the first I'd ever heard of it, and it absolutely terrified me because that was the end. Like there can't be anything after that. I had no ability to see, okay, humans could actually leave Earth. It was just, there's nothing after that. And that thought terrified me so much that as I was sitting in bed, I started to kind of think about that. And it was just one of those moments that I started to realize, okay, wait, the Earth has an end. The universe has an end. I have an end. I got to do something with this. And I feel like I was like 8 or 9, to be honest.
Wow.
And it shocked me, kind of shocked me into this state of, okay, I got to do something. And it was from that point on that I just kind of viewed life differently.
Wow, that's pretty incredible that you realized that at 8 or 9 years old. But that seems, you know, I can kind of relate to that because I think when you're 8 or 9, you're in the you're 5th or 4th grade. And so from what I remember about that time, I know there are probably some adults listening like, I don't even remember what I was thinking at that age, but I do remember that at around that age in life, I became more aware of like, okay, I'm in this transitional phase where I'm going from child to potentially preteen, then teenager and whatnot. And I don't know. I mean, it was just something that crossed my mind and kind of made me uh, operate a little bit differently. But that's incredible that watching that show had that profound impact on you that has really probably led you to where you are today with even in YouTube. Do you reflect on that every now and then, thinking like, wow, if I had never seen that show on Nova, maybe maybe Automate Your Life wouldn't even exist as a YouTube channel?
Totally. I think I'd be a very different person, to be honest. I mean, I guess it was probably always a little bit there. So I don't know whether, but it certainly was this moment of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening on television and they're telling me that that's going to happen. And I remember so many things vividly about it. Like, I remember the expansion of the sun through the screen. I'm trying to do it exactly as they did it, like it came that way. And there was this little earth right here and it was gone, and that came back to me as I was waiting to actually get any sort of tired in bed. And so I remember the drapes, everything that I was staring at as I started to get afraid of that. So I think you just have those moments as you're kind of in that age, like you say, you have those moments that you're just going to remember that kind of changed you. And that was one of them. And I did reflect on it so much so that I made it the focus of my channel, because I didn't start out that way on Automate Your Life. I started out with much more, basic visions of what it was going to be. But, I think kind of getting into how we get to where we are on YouTube and in content in general, you've got to love what you're doing. And for me, it meant I had to feel like I was saving people time. Because that's so important to me.
Yeah, it really sounds like it helps to have. I've heard this from other creators that I talk to, and even just myself when it comes to doing this show in general, is like a deeper purpose to it. It all sounds like quite philosophical, but you need to have something that's like at the base of what you're doing to keep you going when it does inevitably get challenging, and it can't just be, extrinsically motivating for you. There has to be some sort of bigger picture purpose that, allows you to bear with those moments. And it sounds like for you, it's like this idea of, I'm helping people save time so that they can actually go out and make use of the time that they have in their lives in whatever way they want, so that they're not, stuck doing things that are unproductive or along those lines.
Yep. Yeah. And it drives me entirely to think about that I'm giving them back that time and that opportunity. What they do with it, I mean, that's up to them. But yeah, that's what drives me. And yeah, I think it's totally required. I mean, I don't even know how many videos I've put online and how many have failed and how many I had to drudge through. And it's, in some cases it's 1 a.m. and you're still working on an edit, and then you're uploading and you're going, okay, I want to get this out, and it just crashes and burns and nothing ever comes of it. You got to fight through those moments, because, I think in anything in life, the people who fail quit. If you don't quit, you don't fail. And you might have to head down a little bit of a different path. You might have to shift. Okay, just don't quit. And so you need that thing that keeps you driving.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's touch base here on the origins and the start of your YouTube channel. I know from reading your website that it all started with a tutorial setup of Google Home in 2017. Why did you decide to film that specific experience and share it with people?
So I'd been doing a little bit of home automation in my home. I had bought some stuff, and with what I had done in my career, I actually had access to like actual PLCs, and those things, they can be $20,000. So you get access to one of them, you've got something that you can really have some fun with. So, I was playing a little bit with that stuff, and I just saw a little bit of momentum, and I saw something really genius in what Google had done with their voice assistant, and some of just what I was seeing going on in the industry, some real genius coming out. And I've been always tech support for my whole family, and it was just time to kind of do that. And it all came together as a vision of, okay, I can help people in the world with something simple that I'm going to do. But it all started well before that. Something I don't put on the website is I had I had created a channel. It was a kids channel. Like, it was animated monster trucks destroying things, but it was teaching kids. So I remember watching my little guy. I think he was like 1.5 or something. And my wife at the time is showing him these videos, and they're just garbage. They're just terrible, vacuous content that nobody should be watching, because all it is a monster truck exploding bombs as it drives in a straight. And the kid's just glued to it, right? He's just, wow, this is amazing. So, I'm watching that and I'm going, I can do better than this. This is garbage. I couldn't do better than it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that graphical of a guy, but I taught myself how to animate in After Effects, and I started posting kids content. And I had some reasonable success. The money was actually really good because kids watch a lot on YouTube. You'd be surprised. Yeah. But then I kind of saw the end coming as YouTube started to clamp down on kids content and what was monetizable and all this. And I just, I'd come to the point where I'm going, man, am I putting a lot of work into these? And it's not driving me, right? I'm not, it's no longer driving me. It served the purpose because I got my kid not to watch the total garbage. Yeah, so that was actually the start, because I went, okay, I don't want to do that, but I really enjoy creating content, building a business around that. And I see all these other opportunities, and I'd like to do that. So I was waiting for an inspiration, and I actually walked away for, I think it was a year and a half from YouTube in general and creating content. And I just waited. And that was what came to me, as I went, oh, I just would really like to help people with this stuff. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. It seems like both channels, or both platforms that you built for yourself, were designed by you to solve a problem.
Yeah.
There was a problem with the content that your kid was watching. You're like, I think we should not let our child watch this. Let me make something better. And that, as you were saying that whole statement about like, I can do this better, is that not just the origin story of anybody who goes into any creative endeavor or any entrepreneurial endeavor? Is just, you see what the status quo is, and you're like, I think I can do much better than this, and let me at least try. Yeah. And that's also like a good enough, initial motivation to get you going and get you started on something.
Yeah. No, I think that's it. That's the entrepreneurial spirit in a nutshell. And I think people make it more complicated than it needs to be. But really, I just went, okay, this is terrible. It's vacuous is the exact term, and this is what I'm pumping into my child's mind. So at least I can solve it. Like you said, I really do like to have that focus. I'm solving something for people. They have a problem. I'm going to solve it. And if I'm not doing that, I don't, in a lot of cases, feel like the content is it's not what I want to be doing. I know there's a lot of great creators and a lot of people who do things much better than I may ever do them, but and they're just doing it for, you know, for fun or to be silly or those things. They're solving for entertainment. I'm not that guy. I'm going to solve for something I see as a issue.
Gotcha. So now, when it came to starting the channel and then getting some traction, how long did that take for you before you started seeing maybe some subscribers coming in, some views coming in? Do you have any videos too that you remember, like, okay, this is the one that like brought people at the beginning?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the early stuff, it performed okay because I was very specific with the topics that I started to create. I was finding the search patterns, what people were looking for. And so I was bringing in a search-based audience quite a bit. That didn't drive a lot of subscribers, but it did drive a decent amount of views and watch time and things like that. So it was actually starting to drive revenue. I remember a couple of months after I was posting, I was making like $100 a month on YouTube. So it was that's quick. Like, people don't make $100 on YouTube for a year usually, or 2 years nowadays, you know, in a lot of cases. So it kind of came very quickly. But what happened was Christmas Day came and everyone opened up their Google Home Mini. So I had made that Google Home video like July or August or something. And I posted a Google Home Mini setup video, a very simple one. And somebody who had got the original Google Home Mini from Google at some kind of launch event had posted right after they got it. They posted a video that was a setup, but that setup failed. They failed. And they left it online and it had millions of views. So what happened was all the suggested views at the end of that became my video. It was a very unique video. As it was successful, I explained things very simply and most people could get it working. So it took off. It took off huge. There's this huge spike in my traffic on December 25th, and then it kind of comes down on December 26th, and it goes till the 30th or something. And that really set the channel on a new trajectory and taught me a lot, because I had to realize somebody else had failed and YouTube picked up on that somehow through their algorithm, that people still needed help. And they started directing to my video. So I learned something very interesting about YouTube in that moment.
Wow. Yeah, that is something I never even thought about that myself when it comes to YouTube content, but you hear I've heard of similar scenarios too when it comes to just general SEO on Google, right? It's like, if the Google search results will send you, you know, the first page, top 10 results that hopefully will answer your question. But Google is also analyzing how long is somebody staying on that page. Are they bouncing very quickly? Are they going back and then clicking on another result? And that sends signals to their algorithm that, okay, maybe this piece of content isn't actually answering the question. Obviously with YouTube, it's much more self-contained because the content lives on the platform, whereas Google is scraping data from people's websites. And so it makes it much more of an accurate read, which is like a cool little inside tip too for people. Maybe just if you're struggling for ideas for content, maybe, you know, look at other existing videos and see, I don't think they necessarily explain that well, or maybe there's this other element to this you know, to this tutorial that they didn't include and I can just add to my video, and that might make it get some traction. I mean, there's the options seem limitless, and I imagine that's something you incorporate in your strategy today, right?
Yeah, and it's the same as what you said. I can do that better, right? And you know, truthfully, that video, I mean, I just made a video. Right. I just made something that I thought people would need some help with. I'd had minor success with the original Google Home setup video. And I went, okay, this device, lots of people are going to get because it's cheap and it does all the things the other speaker does. Okay, so I'm just going to make a video like that. I was just making a video, but I fell into that position where somebody had not solved something and I ended up solving it for them. And so after watching that video, and if you looked at the I looked at the comments, the people were angry because they spent 15 minutes. So then what happened is they spend 15 minutes, don't get their Google Home working, and then they find my video and they're happy. So subscribers, lovely comments. I felt like $1 million. It was fantastic. But really all I'd done is created a little setup video that, nothing fancy about it. But it is a good strategy. Like when you see people creating content that, addresses a topic fairly well, but maybe is missing out on a couple of things that you could probably integrate or do a little bit better, 100%, because if their video did great, there's an audience looking for it. And if it wasn't satisfied, if the need wasn't satisfied, you can do that and people love you for it.
Yeah, definitely. That is something that I think creators need to take advantage of especially if you're just getting started, right? Because you don't have an audience of your own yet. Nobody knows who you are. So you kind of have to piggyback off of what already exists out there in the ether to construct your own audience. Now, in terms of eventually leaving your career as an engineer, what was that moment like for you? I imagine it wasn't like a single moment. It was probably like a series of moments building up to like, okay, I think I can do this and leave and solely rely on my income and my responsibilities as a content creator. So what did that look like for you? I guess that whole experience building up to eventually leaving your day job.
Scary, but I had a belief, and I think you need to have a belief if you're doing anything in this world. So, with that early channel, with the kids channel, I had learned enough to understand that if I was driven and I was motivated and I was helping people, that everything else would kind of take care of itself. And so I left a little bit early. I mean, I would definitely say in the world of YouTube and full-time content creators, and I left early because I think I had 18,000, 19,000 subscribers. I think the revenue from YouTube Direct was under $1,000 a month. These are not things you can live on as a person with a kid. So, I had been prepping for quite a while to leave my career. I'd been saving money. I wanted to make sure I was able to get through some time. And just, unfortunately the company that I was at, they weren't going to let me do kind of what I wanted. There's a whole story there. I started as an automation engineer, a very small, tiny niche inside of a huge company. I left that company knowing as much about tanks and piping and valves and civil engineering as I did anything in automation. And I had specifically taken my career in that direction so I could kind of learn the whole business and learn everything about how the business worked. Unfortunately, when you do that, they want to move you around quite a bit. And they moved me to something I just absolutely hated. And then they moved me deeper into it and into a weirder spot that didn't fit my career. And this is just how the company works. They want to move their, I'll say, reasonable performers around, and they want to get them throughout the company doing different things. And they just had moved me into a spot where I was at a point I knew I was ready to go, and it just became such a bad thing for me to continue to do. And I had prepared all of that with my wife, and I had prepared hey, I'm going to make this transition. I'm going to change, and we're going to go on a different path. And, the other thing is I saw my kid, he was getting to the age where he was ending up in daycares because we were both heavily career focused people. And I didn't love that either. So I thought, okay, he's going to school. I can do this during the day, and then I can do it in the evenings too. I have lots of flexibility of how I can work. This actually works better for our life. So, the revenue wasn't there, the money wasn't there, but the lifestyle that I wanted was there. And I mean, it's allowing me to do stuff like this, right? I'm going to go get him in a couple of hours, and we're going to hang out for the whole day, and then I'll do some work this evening. So, that was kind of lots of the motivation. I don't know if I really answered what you wanted to hear, but, it was obviously very, very scary leaving that much money behind. That's the reality. Like, it's so, I'd have made a lot more money over those couple of years. That's for sure.
Yeah. But it also sounds like to me, you were, you took a calculated risk. It wasn't like this whole idea of, hey, I just quit my job and now I'm figuring it out. Like a lot of people think that's what living a risk-taking life is. And I find that more people who actually are taking these, what seem on the surface to be big risks, are actually more calculated and have set up things behind the scenes that allow them to decrease the probability of like absolute ruin. And that sounds like what you did.
I mean, the on YouTube revenue was low. I didn't have a huge following, but there was growth, and I could see the growth, and I could see a path for growth. That was one side of it. I've been working with other creators, and I had at that point one creator signed up with me, and he was growing quite well, and we were doing quite well together. So I had that revenue source. I picked up 5 or 6 different little revenue sources. And those were all telling me I'm heading in the right direction and just to continue, and I'll be able to make it through. I also had fallback plans. Like I could have contracted for a little bit, and so I had some things set aside that would get me through it. It took a little longer than I wanted it to, but I came out the other side, and at this point, things are really good.
So why don't we talk a little bit more about what things look like for you today from a business standpoint? Because I know when we first met, because you had mentioned to me that you do work with creators as like a consultant. So I imagine that's like one revenue stream for yourself. You're in such a interesting space, covering technology, like equipment, devices, and things like that. There's strong buyer intent there in terms of creating content around all of that. So you've got your ad revenue, I imagine, but what does like the streams of revenue look like right now for you in terms of running your business?
I would say it's still a good chunk still comes from on YouTube, and I think I calculated that at 30 or 40% last year. And that's from all the revenue coming from YouTube. But, today I have big amounts coming from Amazon. They have an affiliate program where you're just driving. You're driving people across, but they also have an influencer program. And the influencer program allows me to syndicate my videos on Amazon US. I have to do some minor modifications. I have to take out things like, hey, subscribe, or the pricing, because they don't want the pricing being up there. So you have little modifications you've got to do. All the other social media networks, I would say, don't really drive a lot of revenue, but I sell ebooks. This is my first designed Brian Automate Your Life merch. And actually the website started to sell some things that way. You also have all the other affiliate programs from all of these companies. Like there's a lot. The tech and the smart home folks, they're really hungry. Lots of little companies. So they set up these little affiliate programs. They pay really well. So sometimes that can be really good. You have sponsorships. I have a lot of sponsorships that come through. And, you know, I've lessened that. I've tried to lessen that. I want to be very genuine with my audience. And there's there's this natural assumption that I'm getting money from companies for every video. And that's just a natural assumption in tech in general. So kind of fighting against that. I haven't taken a sponsorship in a very long time. And when I do, I'm very clear about that with the vendor. Like, you're not affecting this. This is my content. You get what you get and you don't get upset. That's the fun term. So, but, you know, nowadays, 20-30% is coming through these other creators. And so a lot of my time is spent teaching other creators. And I've actually created a course to help impart lots of what I've learned over the years. And I don't you know, sit here and consider myself some kind of top creator in the world. You always I view myself as like, okay, I'm an okay creator, but a lot of people can use a little bit of guidance and they miss some of those basics. And I think just, you know, I've been able to reinforce some basics with some of the channels, and we've had really good success. And, you know, one of the content creators I work with, his channel is much larger than mine at this point. He drives way more views. He's doing great things. And I love seeing that, because when I started working with him, he was making about $100 a month. And, you know,
wow.
And to put it in perspective, he passed six figures long ago in a year. Right. So, and that's awesome. Just on YouTube revenue. So it's excellent stuff to be a part of.
Cool. Well, I want to dive a little bit deeper into, you know, I guess your guidelines for dealing with brand sponsors there. And so you mentioned there that you have very specific do's and don'ts, I guess, when it comes to working with brands. How did you come up with your parameters or your terms of working with them? Because I imagine, especially in the beginning, it's probably like so tempting when a brand says, we'll pay you like X amount of dollars to do this, because you've never had that happen before. But over time, you want to have standards essentially, and be able to walk away from deals that don't feel right.
And I think that's where you know, creators have to make sure they're in a space where they can kind of say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And I told you, the money wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. So some of those sponsorships that came in the first year that I was out of work, doing my own thing, you know, some of those sponsorships I look back at and I go, I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't a good one, you know. And you're at the money. You're going, oh my gosh, I can make more money with this than I would make and all the time with the ad revenue. So it's very tempting. And I think that as long as a creator is in a good space for themselves, like they're comfortable, they're not feeling pressured on the money side, I think they have to maintain that distance. So, you know, lots of the things I say to these companies when they come, that's been developed over time. It's not like day one I had this perfect strategy for dealing with them. I made some mistakes, and you know, I found ways to come back a year later and say, listen, this wasn't great to my audience. So hopefully some of them see it and go, okay, yeah, I remember that mistake, but it's okay. But, you know, in general, dealing with the brands, as I said, the philosophy has been developed over time, and actually having someone that I work with, Madeline, she really has helped me to design a way to bring companies through without letting them feel like they have any control over any of it. Like, okay, you can send. So what we do now is feel free to send us product. We make no promises, 100%. And then a company at that point has a decision: send product or try to work out some different deal. When they try to work out some different deal, what they find is the answer is no. And that's because they just want to pay for their product to show up on your channel. And then you end up in this situation where I don't like that product, or it's got a real bunch of problems, or this doesn't fit my audience.
Yeah.
Or so now it's send it to us. I'm going to have a look at it. If I like it, I'll talk to you. We'll come back to you and we'll approach you. That's how I do the tech reviews now. So I don't accept a tech review until I've worked with a product for a substantial amount of time. And that's just, I think that's a smart home thing too, because you really have to make sure that a product's going to be reliable over time. Like the lights back there, if they don't work, I can't be telling people to buy them. So, I think that the first thing is you have to be really, really comfortable with the product, the brand, all of the things they're doing. And so get yourself familiar however you have to. The second thing is make sure you understand just how much work it's going to be and set out the guidelines really, really early. Like you can watch the video before it goes live. You can make suggestions, but they are suggestions. And so I'm really this is the way it works, guys, because I'm not breaking the trust with my audience, because you cannot get that back once you've done it. So
Got it. Is this something that you have to coach some of your creator clients on too? Because I'm sure some of them, they feel that temptation of like, this is money that I might leave on the table. Like I gotta, pay my rent or pay my mortgage or something like that. I have groceries to pay for. I've got health insurance. Well, probably not in Canada for you guys.
We still gotta pay. We still gotta pay. Yeah.
Okay. You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going with that, Brian. But just because a lot of these like kind of go down this rabbit hole on like how people's relationship with money is, more than just like, should I work with this brand or not? It's like, what kind of mindset or psychology do you have around your relationship with money at this point?
Yeah. So, and I mean, every creator is different. And I think that's something you guys, we talked about this. Every creator is different. We all have our different process. We all have our different takes on how things work. And, in a lot of cases, I think you're finding very strong personalities too. So, every time I deal with a creator, they're a different animal, and they're going to be fun in their own ways, and they're going to be challenges in other ways. And, their relationship with money drives a lot of what you do as a channel, and how it's done, and how they approach sponsorships too. Like that feels like an aside, because you almost have to teach. I find I have to teach creators to think in a way that is audience first, and the money will take care of itself. If you put anything else first, you're on a path to the wrong place. And I think once you have that mentality or that thought in your head, that things go a lot better on all of the channels I've worked with. Like it'll come. Just do the right things, and that's first. And then the sponsorships, they get offered money, and sometimes you just see that brain snap back. You see people go, "Oh man, are you kidding me? They're going to pay that much? Okay, let's do it." Whoa. Wait. Right. So yeah, that's a constant. It's a constant struggle, and that's one of the big things with creators is lots of them are type A personalities who are go, and they're getting money, and they're strong individuals. So sometimes you got to let the thing happen to them. And sometimes you find a way to kind of warn them and back them off. And I've done both. I actually find sometimes it's better to just let them do it once and find out, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. That was not enough money. I don't like doing that. They did these things to me. I'm not doing that. Right. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they almost need to go through the fire themselves to realize, okay, I don't, even though you've been through it yourself, they still need to like touch the stove and let it burn them in order to realize, yeah, I should have listened to Brian and just like not gone that route.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson, because I used to fight pretty hard with people like, no, you don't want to take that. You don't know, it's going to be terrible. You're going to hate what that does. And I'd be so forceful, but it's taken time to realize, and maybe just being a little bit older, a little bit more gray, to go, okay, we can try it, but here are my concerns with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as we get closer to wrapping this up here, there are a couple more things that I want to talk to you about. Your niche, what you're doing in terms of tech reviews, obviously, is very competitive. There are so many tech reviewers out there. There's all kinds of people who are, providing their insights on the latest technology out. I mean, I look up stuff all the time in terms of computers and cameras and whatnot. But I find it fascinating that it's very similar to another creator who we had on this show, Josh McNair. He's a travel blogger. Another very crowded niche is just travel blogs. How many people out there are just like, I left my job and I decided to travel the world. There's a million of these people now. But you, like him, he focused on a specific niche of travel. Like his channel is focused on California travel. And your channel seems to focus specifically on just smart home technology. And I imagine that was by design.
100%. As it evolved over time, it became more about time. So that will be the eventual evolution of automate your life. But, at the initial onset, I was only home automation or smart home gadget focused. And really today, that's what I do. So, I think it's important to niche down and create something distinct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's it's like finding a niche within the niche, like going to a sub niche of like a bigger niche that can also help. Because again, people, I would love to start a travel vlog someday, but I probably don't want to just do something that everybody else has been doing. Maybe it'll be a travel blog on like living in the Midwest of America. Who's doing that? You still could capture some interest, in people who want to do travel.
But I think I don't. The smart home, that was important initially because it gave me an audience that cared about getting these little gadgets and things. But the truth is that it's much more important to have your why. And my why is to save people time. So no matter what I'm working on, somebody who values their time should value my content. And I haven't been perfect in that. I'm not this amazing creator. I'm trying to navigate in that direction. But I think that's more important. When you talk about the travel vlogs and those, the van life, there's a great example. The van life people are out there creating travel vlogs and living vlogs, but they're really about minimalism. And people love the idea of minimalism. Lots of people love the idea of minimalism. And that's the why. Right? It's not so, okay, you see what they do on a regular basis, but how are they doing it and why they're doing it is what you identify with. And, again, saving time is why I do what I do. So it doesn't matter to me whether it's a phone. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a keyboard or fancy piece of smart home technology like those lights. It's got to save time. And as I've been able to focus on that more and more, you find an audience more engaged. So I think when I say niche, I don't mean smart home. I mean smart home to save people time. And I think that's a really important distinction for creators today, because these crowded marketplaces that we really are, I feel like in a lot of cases hitting this saturation level where there's just so much out there. And to break through, you've got to have that extra piece to you that people really attach to, because they'll do the sharing for you. Right? As a content creator, you're on a hamster wheel in general. You got to go create stuff. You can't be on that hamster wheel on social media and you know, in all these other different aspects. One of the ways you can not have to do that is to get other people to share your content. And the way for them to do that is for them to believe in it. So the why, I find, is much more important than the what.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to end this conversation, Brian. I think there's nothing better. There's no better question that I can ask to elicit a better response to what you said there. So, but there's still so much more I would love to talk to you about, and maybe at some point we'll have to do a round two.
That sounds fun.
Because I always over prepare, I think, and write like a million questions, and then the conversation goes in different places and surprises me. And that's always the fun thing about this. But as we wrap up here, why don't you just let everybody know where they can find you, you know, where they can subscribe to your YouTube channel, other things that you want to plug in.
I think everything begins at our YouTube channel, Automate Your Life. And I, you know, if you want to save time in your life, that's the point of the channel. And it's meant to be, it's meant to bring you all the exciting things that are going on in our world. So I really love doing that, and I hope people join us there, and then they'll find their way to everything else that I do, which, yeah, helping creators. They can find that through all the links on those videos.
Fantastic. Yeah, reach out to Brian if you need help with your own content creation journey. I mean, if the stuff that he talks about resonates with you, then he's definitely the person that you want to reach out to and see if he's accepting new clients. So.
No, we are right now, but I had to close off, you know, middle last year or so. But thank you for saying that. You know, it's important, I think, for all creators. You got to find someone who you do align with in a lot of ways in how you run, you know, a channel and a business, because there's a lot of different ways to be successful on YouTube. There's a lot of different ways to be successful as a content creator. It's not necessarily my way, and it's not necessarily the ways that you see with other big content creators. So, yeah, you got to align on that kind of that personality and that focus in life. So, but yeah, no, we're still accepting.
Amazing. Well, there you go. There you have it. Reach out to Brian if you want to work with him. Thank you so much for joining me on the Videocraft show presented by Video Husky. It was
Thank you, sir, and take care. We'll talk soon.
As always, I gotta thank my guest Brian Reed for joining me on this edition of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky. We've got links to everything, most of the things that we talked about in this episode in the show notes, so make sure to visit www.videocraftshow.com to find all of those things and so much more. And also, you can go there to subscribe to our email list. It's the best way to stay up to date on everything that we're doing with the Videocraft Show. We send you updates every time a new episode is out and anything new and creative that we might be working on. So again, make sure to visit www.videocraftshow.com to learn more and to sign up to our email list. As always, I've got to thank my team for helping me to produce this episode of the show. Thank you to my producer, Nikki Vicente, as well as our editor, Ingrid Saraiba, and Paulo Lopez handling graphics for the show. As always, could not do this show without all of you guys. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky. Make sure to tune in in another 2 weeks for another episode, another interview, another conversation. Until then, I'm Jonathan Santiago, and again, you have been listening to the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky.